I sit down at home, decided to watch some TV, listening to the news like Gordon Mosley. I listening to the things that he say he tracking tonight, paying close attention to make sure I hear it right. Now when I hear the things that he mentioned on the news, I had to declare, them kind of thing got me confused. I hear some things where the ERC noticing, and it convinced me that people ain't learning nothing. We hear so many times about them big name calling, and they say ERC pretend that they didn't learn nothing. But once you're black and you just decide to say a word or two, bet your life on that, they say ERC coming for you. Listen to the things you just hear on social media. Only one set of people allowed to talk in one Guyana. I still say nothing, black people in learning. But this is my concern, I hope one day black people will learn. ERC that I would like to know, if any of his members happens to be black people. And if that is the case, I want them to answer this call. Tell me how come none of them ain't got no voice at all. You're showing signs of weakness and you're afraid to be fair, and we see the same thing keep happening year after year. And the day will come when all this nonsense will stop. That will be the day when black people decide to wake up. Not so long ago, something terrible happened. This young Indian man want to kill out all black people by poison. But if his shoes was on the other foot, would have been a big threat. But up to this day, this TIIME can do nothing as yet. How come it's only black people committing cybercrime? When pretty on social media fussing people all the time, I still say black people in learning. But one day will come when the entire table will turn. Excuse me, see they fail to condemn, because these people think that the law is only for them. And anybody else who decide to file a complaint, they go call you a racist and don't want to hear nothing. Plenty complaint from time to time has been brought to their attention, but because of this one-sided cybercrime is why they don't show any concern. There's only one set of people that they really care about, and black people must take the abuse and shut them out. Candidacy Amsterdam went to court just recently for an issue that was highlighted by the same ERC. And with breakneck speed, the police decide to jump on his case. Without a search warrant, they went and search up the man's place. Let us all agree that black people under attack. Different laws for you and me just because we black. I still singing. Black people in London. To all my black friends, we must put a stop to all this nonsense. Cybercrime laws to keep people silent, just to make sure nobody criticizes this government. And while that is a very clear case of dictatorship, it is no surprise that the ERC ignoring it. Why only the chosen few is allowed to have things their way, when people like me and you must have nothing to say? And when ministers in the government start to launch their attack, you never hear this ERC come out and talk about that. They send a policeman all the way to New York. This fella went up there to serve a cold summer man with all bark. Under this thing, this government decide to fabricate a case, but like they forget the warning they get from Latisha James. The vice president described that he use as a low life. Because of this kind of abuse, he don't have a wife. I still singing. Black people in learning. Just the other day, I hope your man see help is on the way.
All right, so today we are here at Club Twilight up in Buxton, and we are here to talk about all that's going on up here. Trust me, if you are on the East Coast, you're in Buxton, you're in Tongue, you're looking for a place to get away to, this is the place. The Cutters, mwah. Listen, I'll be having some just now again. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the ambience is beautiful, fully air conditioned. The decor is on point. The music's on point. Everything's on point. It's just me. I need some work. But everything else that belongs to this club here is on point. So if you want to find a nice little place where you can just drive out of town and have some drinks, have some food, you can call, you can order your stuff and just take it. You don't have to stay. Or if you want to stay here, that's what's up. And of course, they have special events for Valentine's. You can rent a hall. You can rent a hall, honey. You can rent a hall for weddings, for birthday parties, to have a bash. I hope he edits that out. But you know, whatever it is, this is definitely the place to be. So it's on Sideline Dam. You definitely want to ensure that you check this place out. But it's on your to-do list. All right, on your to-do list. This is definitely the place to check out, you know, a really cool, chill spot here in Buxton. I like this. This is, Buxton needed this. We needed this. I needed this. You definitely needed too. Thank you. All right, so you might be wondering where we are, still in Buxton at Club Twilight. That's where we are. So Club Twilight also has like an Airbnb as well. So you could come, drink, drunk, and come in the back here and lie down. Look at that. Look at that. Perfection. And the people come in the room and so on. The bed sheet matching, the blind matching, the carpet matching, the this matching, the that. We know but we things in Buxton don't play with we. So definitely if you want to come and, you know, you may be having a wedding or whatever and you just want to overnight and just have a good time because you're going to be drunk, we got too much road accidents. So you definitely want to come drink, have a good time. They have several rooms that you can rent. You have your toilet, you have your bath, you have your sink, you have your dining area, you have the pet. This is nice. I like it. Anyways, to my friends and my family, if you're looking for me, I'll be overnighting. Also, for those persons who are traveling in from overseas, you want a nice, cozy place out of town, then Club Twilight, call them up, look them up on social media. They have their own Facebook page, and ensure that you come up the side and have a good time. Have a good time. Have a good time. Sorry. I'm sorry. That's it.
Don't be a victim. Beat the heat with EC Crystals. Party ice in large and small quantities. Call 682-7981 or visit us at Club Twilight, Sideline Dam, Buxton North. EC Crystals, pure party ice. Stop running around like headless chicken. Go to Ashton's Marketplace for whole and cut chicken, beef, pork, processed meats like bacon, beef franks, smoked ham, ground pork, calabresa, and lots more. Ashton's offers wholesale and retail. Check them out. Call 613-2332 or WhatsApp 434-327-3955. Ashton's Marketplace at 72 Rob Street, Border. Are you hosting an event? Do you need ice, party ice in large or small quantities? Then call us at 622-5933 for the best party ice available. $1,000 per bag. We do delivery. EC Crystals, Sideline Dam, Buxton North. Call to have your orders filled today. Planning a party? Worry no more. We have all the supplies you need. At EC Party Rentals, we have folding chairs, folding tables, square tables, round tables, long tables, short tables, big tables. We have chairs, red chairs, gold chairs, white chairs, crystal chairs, chairs of all type, throne chairs. What you want, we have. Food warmers, coolers, ice, beverages. At EC Party Rentals, we have what you need to have a good time. You plan the party, we do the work. Call us 622-5933. Easy Party Rentals. Let's keep your party going. Are you hosting an event? Do you need ice, party ice in large or small quantities? Then call us at 622-5933 for the best party ice available. $1,000 per bag. We do delivery. EC Crystals, Sideline Dam, Buxton North. Call to have your orders filled today. You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T and W Harris Butcher Shop located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T and W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more. But there are lots of things for us to talk about. And that is what Guyanese Morning Time is about, talking about what's happening. And so let us start to talk about what's happening. First up is, let me see which I want to get out of the way first. Let me get Daniel Serum out of the way first. Yesterday, my screen is blowing up. Everybody is calling me. Everybody is messaging me. Mr. Serum, you see Daniel Serum, the Region 4 chairman, has switched allegiance to the PPP. He has endorsed Ali and Jagdi and so on and so on and so forth. The question I ask every single one of them, and the question I'm asking you,
What would cause you to believe that he has switched allegiance? He has not switched allegiance. Daniel Siram has always been loyal to the PPP. Many of you who are with Camps TV and Guyanese Morning Time, Buxtonian Morning Time from 2020 thereabout, would always remember me calling out Daniel Siram to be a PPP hack sitting on a coalition seat as chairman for Region 4. Region 4 is the biggest region. And here's something I'm going to tell you that perhaps you didn't know. At least it was told to me that way. And I believe the person who said it at the time. It is Amna Ali who recommended Siram for the chairmanship of Region 4. Amna Ali recommended Siram for the chairmanship of Region 4. Gives Jackie Jacket Samuel Sandy, who eventually, I don't know where Samuel Sandy is right now, but he was eventually, through the efforts of Aubrey Norton, made the regional vice chairman. And I think that's one of the reasons why Granger and friends hated Norton so much, because I think Norton acted against the script at that time. Because it is argued that the AFC was supposed to get a regional vice chairman position. I think that person should have been Nielsen McKenzie, who I saw not so long ago a wanted bulletin being issued for. Right? Yeah. So the elections and so on took place at the Bladenall Multilateral School Auditorium, or MPH, they call it, multipurpose hall. And I was there. I got word of what the ASC at the time was threatening to do. In short, they were threatening to vote with the PPP if they couldn't get the chairmanship. And I did a program early that morning, and perhaps the morning before, and called them out because I had gotten the information. And I said this shit thing gonna happen. And I called them out on that. And so Norton and others had the way to maneuver the thing, if I can call it that, and make Sandy regional vice chairman. To date, I will say, Sandy has been a disappointment for me. Just as Daniel Siram has been a disappointment for me. But Sandy more than Daniel Siram, because I saw Sandy as a party person, a PNC diehard, guy who grew up in the East Coast village there and know what Black people's struggles are and understand the challenges of Black people and so on. And was therefore, in my book, expected to really support the cause of Black people and do what is right and just by Black people. But in my own observations and conclusions, he failed. He failed us miserably. Remember, that's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. And Sandy has a right to reply also. I always say that when I talk about people. Because I said to you, I don't call people name. But when I call people name, I give them the right to reply. So they could come back and represent themselves. But I always said, as you will remember, Siram is a PPP hack. Siram sat there and allowed, as regional chair, Siram sat there and allowed the PPP to do the guards. Allowed to do the PPP the guards. Not only was he chairman of the biggest region, most populated region, but the region that gave the most support to the coalition, on whose strength he was sitting in that regional seat. And the majority of the coalition supporters are African Guyanese or are African Guyanese. And so when you look at Siram as regional chairman, doing outreaches and so on to communities in Region 4, you would see that bias. That bias. I don't know if in his entire tenure, Siram has visited 5 African Guyanese villages in this country, or in the region, let me see. I don't think Siram has done an outreach to 5 African Guyanese villages in this region. He was always going to Guyanese communities and doing outreaches, etc., etc. And so I kept telling you, this man is a snake. This man is a wolf in sheep clothing. And I don't know the PNC is not seeing it. I don't know the coalition is not seeing it. Or was it too late for them to do anything about it? So when you all hear Sandy, Siram come out now and say, well, I endorse the PPP. As I would say, he just chose to not hold his breath anymore and just release his lungs from being suffocated or his conscience from being suffocated with the pretense. So there's no big news to me, and I don't know why everybody seemed to be surprised. Yeah, see Siram come. Siram was out all the time. He was always in the PPP camp. I said it, and I have no apologies to it. Good. So y'all could try there. And now I'm going to get to this other issue. Well, before I say that, and these things I'm saying, Flash Gordon says it bluntly. Flash Gordon and Rhonda Lane, they always express the thought, the opinion that Indo-Guyanese cannot be trusted in positions of power, right? Even if they come from a party that is predominantly Afro-Guyanese as a representative. And I can't really fault Rhonda and fault Flash for having these opinions, because the Indo-Guyanese that have been given the opportunity to prove otherwise, save and except for people like Winston Murray, right? Have turned out to be turncoats. They've turned out to be Judases. They've turned out to be pretenders. They say speak no ill of the dead. But even in the last days of Amnali on the face of this earth, Amnali started, or behavior started causing me to question her loyalty, where loyalty lay, where loyalty lay, right? And then when you look at our funeral or janazah or whatever they call it, Muslim rights or funeral and so on, and tributes were being paid, you really start seeing a picture coming together that Amnali was closer with the PPP than many of us thought. Right? And so many of us look at Amnali as a diehard PNC, and nothing could shake her loyalty. But then, bops, she died. And you start seeing a lot of, I want to see skeletons coming out of the closets. I don't know if I'm being unfair to the dead, or I mean being unfair to Indo-Guyanese who have been given the opportunity to occupy seats of quote-unquote political power coming out of the efforts of African Guyanese in an election where the opposition gets most of its support from African Guyanese. In his declaration of endorsement, let me call it that, or his return home statement to the PPP, Siram says he has endorsed the PPP in an interest of unity. I'm paraphrasing here. Might not be his exact words, but in an interest of unity, I ask the question, unity of who? What kind of unity? Unity of Indo-Guyanese. I am Indo-Guyanese. The PPP is an Indo-Guyanese party that predominantly Barrett Jagdeo and Irfan Ali are Indo-Guyanese. Why am I fighting them in a predominantly Afro-Guyanese political party? I am coming back to the fold. I'm making it known that I am with the fold. I am here in the interest of unity of Indo-Guyanese. I don't interpret it as any other thing. And let me just quickly segue, if you want to call it that. Not segue. Let me meander. Let me turn back and go around to a man called BK. Just the other day, BK was in the news saying, I have never left the PPP. I have always been PPP. And if you look at BK's relationship with the coalition, I guess it was strictly transactional. And we always argue that Indo-Guyanese are more transactional when it comes to politics in this country than anything else. So look at BK. BK said, who, me? I was always PPP. I never left. I simply returned home now. Right? Can you remember that statement? And that is the trend. That is the natural trend of things. When you look at what is happening on the local political scene with Indo-Guyanese being given access to an Afro-Guyanese political party and political power and so on and so forth. So the reality is, they don't care about us. They care about what we might perhaps be able to give them access to. And so, let me get to the big one in the room that people wanted me to talk about. And that is Azzuddin Mohammed's candidacy, whether presidential or otherwise, but his foray into the politics of this country. His announcement that he intends to contest the elections and he is throwing his hat into the ring. In that declaration of intent, you reference the high cost of living of some things, right? Meat is too expensive for pepper pot. Did he say that? And peas and other ingredients are too expensive for cook up. And whatever else he said in making those reference to how expensive it is, now the quote-unquote poor Guyanese are impacted. Again, I'm paraphrasing, I'm interpreting what I read. Look at his references. The majority, if not all of his references to justify his foray into politics is aimed at touching the hearts of African Guyanese. I want you to pay attention to that. Please pay attention to that. If you go and you look at that statement and you conclude differently, say, Mr. Amsterdam, you mad. Mr. Amsterdam, you schizophrenic. Mr. Amsterdam, you got wild imagination. But from my observation, his message is directed at Afro-Guyanese. And in short, his intention is to get those votes, whatever votes he's looking for, whether it is to get into the National Assembly, whether it is to win the election, whether it is to simply reduce the chances of the coalition, the opposition winning the election, he's intending that they will come from Afro-Guyanese. And so, piggybacking on Daniel Siram's declaration of supporting the PPP in an interest of unity, I am saying to Black people, y'all get with the program. Y'all got to get with the Black State program and show unity among yourselves. This is the time for Africans to unite in this country. This is the time for Black people to wake up and smell the flowers. Wake up and see the reality. And to hell was anybody who telling me about crossover votes and national unity. I, representing the cause and demanding unity from Afro-Guyanese in these elections, do not suggest that I have no respect and I have no care and I have no love and I will be anything other than fair to the other ethnic groups in this country. But I'm saying if African Guyanese want their interests to be catered for, then they ought to unite and ensure that the seat of power is occupied by somebody who has that cultural affinity, somebody who understands the struggle of African Guyanese, and somebody who's prepared to do just by African Guyanese. And from the evidence in this country, I don't see up until now an Indo-Guyanese that has really exhibited that quality. And y'all could go to hell if y'all are upset and if y'all are angry about me taking that position. If the WPAY expel me from the party because that is my position, to hell was that too. But I am saying the reality is right before the eyes of African Guyanese, that they need to unite. Come together regardless of your differences from your Black, from your African Guyanese in this country. You ought to find yourself under the opposition camp, where the biggest political party is the PNC, and whoever they coalesce with, you ought to support that team so that they can win this election and change things around in this country. I don't see it any other way. I simply don't see it any other way. And that is my reality. I don't know if it's your reality, but that is my reality. And that is what I want to say to people today. Don't ask Azzuddin Mohammed. I don't even want to go into the quote-unquote personal. Apart from the American sanctions, let us examine why he was sanctioned. The sanction says that he was sanctioned because of tax evasion, etc. Now, let me ask you this. If you're prepared to evade tax to the hundreds of millions of dollars, your business, your primary business, your primary source of income is from the natural resources of this country. And if you're not prepared to give to the Guyanese people, they're just due from trading in their natural resources. When you're outside of the seat of power, what can convince me that if you are in the seat of power, you will do any different? As a matter of fact, I want to believe that that seat of power will be used to protect you and your business interests. Your business interests, right? Protect you and your business interests as you continue to plunder the resources of this country and not give Guyanese their just due by tax payment, etc. And so, in short, a lot of people are saying Mohammed for president, especially African Guyanese. And again, this shit is aggravating me because they're not looking around them. See, every time they've given an Indo-Guyanese their support, I got throw Stony, and people again might be surprised that it's still there. I got throw it, right? They have not recognized that every time they've given an Indo-Guyanese their support, to sit in a position of power, it doesn't benefit them. What are you going to do this thing again for? Here is the story we're going to show. When Jack Dio was made president, and people in the political scheme of things in this country were kicking up, and what do you say, give the young man a chance? He wasn't wrong. He believed that the youth was going to do different. I switched my camera so you can see what's happening in front of me in terms of the community. Right? He said, give the young man a chance. Nobody you see forever, magnanimous, one of the fairest, most decent political figures that ever walked the lands in this country. Right? He said, give the young man a chance. And we have seen what Jack Dio turned out to be. A thorn in the flesh of Guyanese. A thorn in the flesh of Guyanese. Right? Especially Afro-Guyanese. And all of us will agree that if anything else, Afro-Guyanese have a great reverence to Brother U.C. Guyana. And Brother U.C. Guyana has a great love for his people. Right? And I am sure it turned out to perhaps bother him in reflection and said, this is a man that I say I give a chance. Look what he's doing to me people. Right? So black people, y'all wake up. I don't see Azadeh Mohammed doing any different to all of the Indo-Guyanese who have sat in the seat of power and neglect, refuse to do anything to improve the conditions of the African man in this country. But you know what I'm waiting for? Azadeh Mohammed is only one person. When you're contesting an election, it's the whole team. You gotta get slate. I'm waiting to see that slate. A board tells me that Glenlal is on that slate. A board tells me that Glenlal is on that slate. And again, if you're politically aware, you're going to understand that Glenlal is deep down in his heart PPP. These public spots that you're seeing and hearing these criticisms from Glenlal and so on about government and their policies and so on are not necessarily criticisms against the PPP or a real falling out with the PPP. It might be one or two individuals in the leadership of the PPP who he sees as stumbling blocks to him getting his hand on those aspects of the Guyanese economy that he would like to get his hand on and get his hand in. And so let me watch the slate. As we like to say, let me watch the ride. And we're going to see what Azwaddin Mohammed's slate looks like. And then you're going to ask yourself, wait. Is this really, is Azwaddin's foray into the politics of this country really about wanting to change the fortunes of the working poor in this country? Or is it really about setting up a party for the rich boys and girls so that they can have control over their own economic destiny? Right? That's how, again, that's my take on it. So let's watch, as I would say, let's watch the ride. Let's watch the ride and see where we're going with that. Let's watch the ride and see where we're going with that. We have a few, this is month 5. We are almost at month 6. We have about 90 days to the next election. About 90 days to the next election. African Guyanese have to determine what they want out of this next election and how badly they want it. What they are prepared to sacrifice for it. Me, I'm prepared to sacrifice my freedom. I'm even prepared to sacrifice, let's say, God forbid, my life for the freedom of my people. And so I will do all that is necessary, of course, within the law, to facilitate, to ensure, to work for the removal of the PPP from office in the next election. Lots of work to be done. I don't think we should give up on biometrics. I think just as how we had hundreds or thousands of people out at Square the Revolution, dominated by young African Guyanese, in that battle of the social media influencers, Foreign Mali Dali, whatever her name, and whoever the other girl was. Just like that, hundreds of our people should be on the streets of Georgetown and the streets around this country demanding biometrics as one level of ensuring the credibility of this election, right? So I don't think we should give up on biometrics. I think we should call on our young people to demonstrate in a similar way that they assembled at the Square Day Revolution, that they are in support of the call for biometrics and they are not prepared to accept anything less, and they will not stand for an election that is possibly tainted by multiple voting and fraudulent voting and so on. Right? I think we need to do that. I sincerely believe that it's one of the things we need to do. Again, I'm saying that we need to put our shoulders to the wheel. We have to start to have those conversations. Okay, we have to start to have those conversations with our children, our neighbor, and our neighbor's children, and everybody around us about the importance of these elections and getting the PPP out. On the other hand, have said to a friend, I think last evening we were chatting, and I said, I have a strong feeling these elections are already determined. Determined by who? I don't know. Determined in whose favor? I don't know. But I have a strong feeling these elections have already been determined. If you look at what went on in Suriname, right? If you look at what went on in Suriname, and you look closely, you will see the hands of regime change over there. I sincerely believe that regime change had a part to play in the Surinamese elections. And you know why? My information tells me that Santoki, you see, Santoki's party, the PPP, and what's her name? Kamla Prasad party in Trinidad. I think all of them get cut from the same cloth. I think all of them come from the same cloth. What I understand is happening in the Surinamese election is that hundreds or thousands of Indo-Guyanese, especially from the quarantine. Why use the trafficator now? Oh God, use the indicator. Have been boated across to Suriname. Hundreds of Indo-Guyanese, perhaps a dual citizenship. They got Guyanese ID card and they got Surinamese ID card and so on. Have been boated across to Suriname to vote for the Santoki party. Of course, they were catered for transportation and meals and a top up here and a top up there and everything. That is what I understood happened in Santoki's efforts to win the elections. But at the end of the day, the results proved otherwise. He lost the elections. Why they had to use boat? Because Suriname is across the river. The PPP has been using all forms of transportation, maybe land, sea, and air, to bring people into this country to vote fraudulently for them. And so we have to watch that. We have to watch that. We have to remain vigilant. Right? This is Paranam. The road is a bit, traffic is a bit light here. You saw what was happening. It's 8 minutes past 8 o'clock hour. I can't take your calls, as you will realize. I can't take your calls. But what are some of the issues I wanted to talk with you about this morning? Of course, there are lots of other issues that we will have to discuss from time to time. But let me not forget this one. I don't know how many of you have been following the elections for a case, right? The elections for a case. I want to believe again, the PPP might be mad at itself for causing this case to be heard now, because a lot is being revealed. And again, we're seeing who the real riggers were and who the real masterminds were in terms of creating chaos at GCOM Command Center and so on. In his most recent testimony on the stand, I think police sergeant he was a sergeant at the time, Thomas. I think he got promoted once the PPP got into office. Y'all could correct me if I'm wrong. But he was demoted after the elections for abandoning his station according to the hierarchy of the Guyana Police Force and refusing to be in communication with his superiors in the Guyana Police Force on that fateful day at Ashmin's building. And he was demoted. Good. But then, when you listen to his testimony, understand, you ask yourself, but at least I had always concluded that this man was a PPP mole. This man was a PPP mole. I think at one time he was part of the presidential guard, right? But I said this man was a PPP mole. And here it is in the, what you call it, in his testimony, you're finding out that this man has actually destroyed 2 diaries, 2 police diaries, right? The man destroyed 2 police diaries with pertinent information or information pertinent to what transpired at Ashmin's building on that fateful day. Why would he do that? As a good law-abiding law enforcement officer, why would he do that? What information was contained in those diaries that he had to get rid of them so as not to maybe incriminate himself or something like that? You have to ask me, why would he do that? So the man destroyed the diaries. He also admitted that he had seen a GCOM staffer remove the server, right? Remove the server. So when you listen to, I think you all should follow this case, because when you listen to the testimonies of a lot of these people, the woman from AmCham, I think, American Chamber, who was the prosecution's first witness, I think, did say that, listen, she was handsomely rewarded for her part. She was handsomely rewarded for her part. She got diplomatic passport, and she got this, and she got that. She got offers to state employment and so on and so forth. Big time work and thing. As I remember, and I'm saying, Thomas got promoted after the PPP got into office. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. So these people were being rewarded for their roles in contributing to the chaos that it was at Ashman's building on that fateful day. And so from listening to the testimony and reading the reports and so on, I am concluding, like we have concluded from the recount and so on and so forth, that the real riggers in these elections were nobody else except the people. Right? Those were the real riggers. And y'all could judge it for yourself. Y'all could judge it for yourself. So those are items, those are matters that you have to stay woke about. I run in an empty bag. And so when it's that you think, you don't check. What are you doing? I just realized that driving the people vehicle without gas. So yeah, those of you who wondering, is who nice shiny right, Mr. Amsterdam doing? It's not me or my yellow business. My Miss Faithful had some mechanical issues. So my Miss Faithful is being taken care of. Right? But I gotta try I gotta commute. And so I got good friends and neighbors and people who just rent cars and so on. So yeah. So that's the reality. In other news, by now everybody is aware that Adriana Young's body has been flown to the US and for that independent autopsy. And things are proceeding as they ought to proceed. The most recent information I got is that by now the body should be in the state of Georgia. And by the end of today, the possibility is that post-mortem will be completed. Right? Yesterday, the body was transported to Georgia, or when I was speaking with my contact, the body was en route to Georgia. And definitely by the end of yesterday, it would have gotten there. I understand the pathologists will be requesting it early today for it to be transported to where it is the postmortem will be done, so that they can do the thing. And then at the end of that, we will get word as to what the thing is. And the Guyana Police Force, usually in its political maneuverings and following its political instructions, issued a statement last evening to say that the final pathologist report has concluded or has declared that Adriana Young died of drowning and there were no signs of foul play. One has to ask self, is how come they get this final report so quick when all the time it was a preliminary report? You know what the intention is there? If something is final, then there is no possibility of it being definalized. If there's any such word, right? And so let us make this thing final by. And so this will be the final and official, right? These people are crazy. I'm driving and undertaking me. This is going to be final and official. So let me make it final and official, right? So when this independent post-mortem is done, them boys can come and say that they're tendering this because this is their findings. Now, I have to leave this vehicle for a few minutes, and so I gotta do this in a way that I don't have to mind too much of my business. I am switching the camera so you can watch the traffic. And see what Guyanese has got to put up with on a daily basis. Yes, in the commute. God bless you, and I'll be back shortly. So I see they got one of the usual dancing shows, some Abe Hussein talking about Ghana not being a welfare state and y'all need to go and work and so on and so forth and stop being beggy. Well, I always say it. There's dignity in labor, right? There is dignity in labor. And so I like work. I work. And nothing like Abe Hussein can talk to me about working. Because not only do I work, but I work honestly. right? I work hard and I work honestly. I did so much before I left my home, including starting this program and getting it on the road, as we like to say. We have some dunce drivers in this country, man, indicating that you're coming out and the man in him giving you a chance. Yeah, I can't imagine the stress of driving in this city, right? Yeah, so if Hussein is talking about people being beggy and Ghana being welfare state and so on, at least I don't look forward to living off of welfare. What I look forward to is a society where there's good governance and where the resources of the people are properly managed and fairly distributed, and every citizen has an equal and fair chance of succeeding by the efforts. Not a situation where you have to know somebody in government, you have to be a friend and crony of somebody in government, you have to be prepared to be corrupt to make it in this life. And you're taking me back to Azzuddin Mohammed, because here it is, Azzuddin Mohammed is a member of a family that is considered among the richest, if not the richest in Ghana. And that wealth came from years of trading in the natural resources of this country, etc., for an exchange and stuff like that, supplying the government with arms and ammunition and stuff like that, because they had arms, ammunition dealership license and so on. But when he chose to buy a high-end vehicle, he couldn't, like any law-abiding citizen, go to the counter of GRA, have his taxes assessed on this vehicle, and pay it. He couldn't, or he chose not to, right? And he was allowed not to. And the evidence is there. He says no, he got the evidence, because he has said, his utterances, when this matter goes to court, I am going to reveal information that shows who assisted me. Who assisted me in dealing with this taxation issue for this vehicle. And so he had help from bigger ones. He had help from bigger ones. And many of us Guyanese, big and being stupid. And since I think it was the Ferrari at the time when we said, well, you know, this was a matter of quid pro quo. This is a matter, you scratch me back, I scratch you back. He had provided enhanced security and transportation and so on for a finale leading up to the elections and immediately after the elections and so on. And now that they're in power, he's calling for his pound of flesh. And his pound of flesh was coming in the way of reduced taxes on an expensive piece of asset, if I can call it that, an expensive acquisition. So he was benefiting from that relationship with members of the government, especially a finale. And so it was facilitated for him not to pay what they are now construing is the real assess duty on the item. Right? Now, in a society where there's good governance and there's equity and there's fairness and everybody gets a chance to succeed or fail based on their efforts, Azzuddin would not have needed the help of anybody to deal with his tax situation, because he would have been made to toe the line. He would have had to live, quote unquote, within his means. Is that he could afford to buy this vehicle and pay the taxes or not? Like I live within my means. Is that I can afford to buy a new vehicle or drive Miss Faithful till she decides that she ain't even know how much she can give up the goods, right? Is either I can afford to buy a high-end vehicle or I will stick with my rum until such time that better could be done. That is how I see it. That is how a fair society works. That is how a society works when there's good governance. But in this instance, there's no damn good governance, right? Hannah Mohammed say I should stop that. Hannah, I seem to believe it's a name associated. Are you the sister of Azudin? I think I saw some releases with the name Hannah Mohammed, and so I would be happy to engage you on these discourses, and so you can say to me I'm being unfair or not, I'm being factual or not. Unfortunately, I can't take calls this morning because I am doing this while commuting. But hit me up anytime. My number is 6225933, and we can talk about it. Right? We can talk about it. But I really, let me say, don't intend to, and I always don't intend to, cast aspersions at people, disregard and disrespect anybody's right, but with rights come responsibilities, right? With rights come responsibilities. And everywhere you look around this society, you recognize that the style of governance that we have is a style of governance that doesn't give everybody an equal opportunity, doesn't give everybody a fair chance. Let me talk about this guy. He has formed a political party, VPAC, Darwin Best. I think that's his name, Darwin Best. Are we saying that the only people who can trade in fuel in this country are Guyanese? Is that what we say? Go and look at what this government, what the Ghanaian Energy Agency or Ghanaian Energy Authority, which one it is called, did and put Darwin Best out of business. And he was trading in millions of gallons of fuel in this country. He had a fuel import and resale license. And as soon as the PPP got into power, I think the name of the guy who was at the energy agency might have been Sharma. They took him through the rigors. They did all that they can possibly do. And not only put him out of business, but put hundreds of people, scores of people, out of employment. Why? Because he black? No black man must be able to compete in a sector of the economy where Kuliman dominate. And note I use those two local terms because they're part of our local jargon or part of our local language. They have nothing to do with race. Good? But that's the reality. Good governance. And so Hussein or whatever you name, don't cost me for wanting good governance and wanting fairness and equality of opportunities. Don't do it to me. Because the system that discriminates against us and put a lot of obstacles and barriers in the way for us to succeed. Let me tell you a story. During the cash grant payment, when they were paying out cash grant, a friend of mine in the chair and table rental business and so on was approached by operatives of the PPP who work in the departments of government. They were the people in charge of logistics and so on for the cash grant payment. And they approached and they ordered for rental large quantities of furniture. Large quantities of furniture. With the understanding that they were going to be paid for within the shortest possible time, a week or two. Y'all remember how long the cash grant payment finished? And this is a young black brother. Y'all realize how long the cash grant payment finished? This young man provided stuff to several centers, including one that was at Sir Robin's place in Vigilance here. With assurance that he was going to be paid within a week or so. The cash grant payments have completed. That young man submitted his invoice to payment. To date, he has not been paid. You know what one of the operatives of the PPP told him? you gotta resubmit your invoice. Not only do you have to resubmit your invoice, but you have to resubmit it with business registration, NIS compliance, GRA tax compliance, and all of that. Now, when they went to rent the man's stuff, they never indicated to him that those were requirements for doing business with the government. Never indicated that. And so now time has come for them to pay him. They're putting all of these obstacles in his path. Because, again, a borders whispered to me that the Indo-Guyanese who provided similar services to the government did not have to go through that. And so these are the things we talk about, Hussein. These are the things we talk about. There's no level playing field. The obstacles are placed there to hamburg, to obstruct the progress of the African Guyanese who dare to enter into a sector that apparently is dominated by Indo-Guyanese, or whom the powers that be would like to have dominated by Indo-Guyanese. Look around this country. When I look around this country and I look at auto dealership, you mean to tell me that African Guyanese can buy and sell cars like Indo-Guyanese? Is that what you're saying to me? You mean to tell me black man I get business sense like Coleman for buy and sell car? Or the obstacles are different for African Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese when it comes to import and sale of motor vehicles? I can tell you that the obstacles are different. Because for an African Guyanese to get a dealership license, let me call it that, with a stockyard permit, is like trying to put a camel through the eye of a needle. But we see Indo-Guyanese getting it routinely, like it's just a regular thing. Let me explain to you what is a dealership license and a stockyard permit, or whatever they call it. If you are a vehicle importer, that license will permit you to import as many vehicles as you want and put them in a stockyard, from where they can be displayed and they can be advertised for sale and everything, and so on and so forth. So you get to clear them without having to pay custom duties. So let's say you're bringing in vehicles that attract $800,000 duties, the 1,500cc vehicles, $800,000 duties. If you were to bring in 10 of those vehicles at one go, you got to find $8 million to pay GRA. A lot of people don't have $8 million to pay GRA duties right away and sit and wait for those vehicles to sell, to get back their capital and their, entire investment. There is an arrangement, let me call it that, by law, that allows you to bring those 10 vehicles, park them in a stockyard. GRA controls one of the keys to those vehicles, or the keys to those vehicles, whatever it is. And the importer controls, in order to access the stock, basically in the stockyard, GRA has to be present. Let me make it that easy. So whenever a vehicle is sold, GRA gets its duties at that time. So if you bring this vehicle and it's in the stockyard for 10 months, you will not pay the duties. And when you sell it on the 11th month, you got to pay the duties before it gets registered, etc., etc. That's the facility that a lot of auto dealers in this country of Indian ancestry enjoy. But look around you and see if the same is available or the same is made easy for the enjoyment of auto dealers of Afro-Guyanese descent. I can tell you, well, let me say it is rumored that one of the reasons King Solomon got out of the auto dealership business was primarily that. If you were to go to Belfield, you'll see the skeleton remains of lots and lots and lots of vehicles. Because King Solomon was dominating the auto import sector at that time. And the PPP intended at that time to put a dent in his business. And so one of the demand was that he pays the duties for all of those vehicles on import. So is it that we black people, we Afro-Guyanese, don't want to work? We don't want to earn honestly? We don't want to put our shoulders to the wheel? Or is it that we Afro-Guyanese are so discriminated in this country that we can't get free bread? As we say, we can't get free line and length to get by. Y'all talk to me. Mr. Hussein, talk to me. Right? It's 22 minutes today to talk away to the Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. Let me remind you that PC Party Rentals has all that you need for a party. If you need chairs and tables and tents, and you need food warmers, and you need coolers, and you need half drums, as we like to say. If you need ice, you can get all of that at EC Party Rentals. Just call me, man. Hit me up on 6225933. I'll give you the link. Right, so you can get all that you want. You want a sound system for your party, you can get that. What about a hall? You want a hall? Yeah, we have Club Twilight. You can get Club Twilight, a nice, I'd say medium-sized venue, where you can come and have a rollicking time. You can just plan the party and turn up. Come, let us make the arrangements. You don't have to do all of the heavy lift.
Because what South Africa faced in 2024, global condemnation, investor panic, Trump's threats, Burkina Faso now faces in 2025. Different language, same tone, different president, same empire, and yet the resistance is growing. What began as one country's internal policy is becoming a continental strategy. And if it spreads, the foundations of Africa's post-colonial economy could collapse and rebuild all at once. So, no, Burkina Faso didn't invent this revolution, but it refined it, accelerated it, localized it. And now that the baton has been passed and the fire is spreading, the question is no longer if land reform will define Africa's future, but how far will it go? Will the continent stand together or be picked off one by threats, sanctions, and silence? The moment a nation in Africa takes back control of its land, the air shifts. You can almost hear it. The discomfort in the boardrooms of London, the panic in Brussels, the threats whispered through diplomatic cables from Washington to Nairobi. It's a pattern as old as the flag on the embassy wall. Every time Africans assert ownership over their soil, someone in the West claims it's a threat to stability. But here's what's changed.
Yeah. So we're back together again. What are they telling you about? Oh, I was saying yes. If whatever you need for party, you can contact EC Party Rentals. They have venue, they have equipment, they have sound system. Whatever you need, you can contact them and you'll get stuff set up. Call me on 6225933 and I can give you the link. I am also saying that if you need to plan a party, you're hosting an event, you ain't able to do all the hard work, just call up Club Twilight and they can put that party together for you. You will go sit, have a discourse, indicate what you need, how you want the place laid out and stuff like that, because they have interior decorator and all of that available. And they will put together everything. All you got to do is turn up and have a good time. And if you have had such a good time that you end up drunk and you don't want to drink and drive, then they have some accommodation there. You just got to step across to loose Airbnb and get yourself a good relaxing evening until you think you're sober enough to drive home. Good. And those of you who are coming for vacation, you might want to have a pickup from the airport. Call me, I got a link to Pepe Links. And Pepe Links will pick you up. Right? Pepe Links will pick you up at the airport and drop you off to wherever you wish to go. But better yet, if you're looking for a rental, you want a car to use, a motor vehicle to use while you're here, they also do rentals. Hit me up. I can get a vehicle or two that you can rent and you can drive around in comfort, knowing that it is well maintained and well kept and so on. This I'm sitting inside is an example of what a rental might look like. This is one on the cheaper side. This is not a high end vehicle. Here is one of the low ends, but in very good condition. Very well maintained, looks good, clean, smells good, right? But comfortable, spacious. You got space all over, man. Good utility vehicle, if you ask me. So you're looking for something to rent, to drive around the city with? Call us. We got a link, 6225933. We got a link to link you up. Good. At 15 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour, I want to share with you that same discourse. You know, Ibrahim Traore has been doing so much in Burkina Faso and has been a positive influence on the Sahel region and the wider African community, that ever so often we should take time out and listen to what's happening.
Leadership has calculated the risk. The real
Hello, hi, good morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. How are you doing, neighbor? How are you doing? How was I here last night? And yesterday? And how are you feeling this morning? Have you rested and recuperated? Were you able to achieve those SMART goals that you set? What's good in your neck of the woods? Is it raining there or is it bright sunshine? I'll talk to me. What a go on? What a go on? What a go on? What a go on? I know most of you, if not all of you, are holding your breaths right now and waiting to hear about the conclusion of that second autopsy on Adriana Young. We know that the corpse was taken to the US earlier in the week. We know that it traveled from Miami perhaps to Georgia. And we know that there is a team of pathologists there waiting to examine the corpse, examine the body of Adriana Young. And I too am anxiously awaiting their findings. Because in no way, shape, or form can the Guyana police force and the PPP and their handlers convince me that she died of accidental drowning. Note I said accidental drowning. Maybe they can say she died of drowning, but certainly couldn't be accidental. So I await the outcome of that second autopsy. But I'm asking myself, what happens at the conclusion of that second autopsy? What happens? If the second autopsy, which we expected to, I personally expected to, is at variance with the pronouncements that the friends, favorite, and family of the PPP have been making. What happens? How do we move from there to there? How do we reconcile the differences? Those are some questions in my head. I note I said the utterances of the PPP's friends and family, and I didn't say at variance with the autopsy report from the pathologists who did that first post-mortem examination, because their report might be saying things that might be very similar or might be, well, not necessarily the same, similar and the same. Their findings might be the same or similar to those that this second group of pathologists will find. But the question is whether or not their findings have been communicated to the Guyanese people with honesty. I want you to take careful note, and I like to do these things so that we get to separate the sheep from the goat. I want you to take careful note that none of the pathologists from the first postmortem examination has uttered a single word on their findings. They have not said a thing about their findings. And that can suggest to me that they're smart and that they're not speaking on the matter, so they can always say, well, that is not what our report said. If they were to be brought before a court of law, or if they were to be brought before a licensing body, I think they want to be able to say, we didn't say that. We didn't say that. It's the government that said that to the public. This is what our report contains. So, plausible deniability. The pathologists have not spoken on this issue. So what we are getting from the government all the time is second and third hand information.
And so we have to ask ourselves whether that information that is being communicated to us second and third hand is accurate, is a true representation of what is written in the report from the pathologists. We don't know. You don't know, I don't know. So it's a guessing game. But I understand at the end of the postmortem, our good friend and hard-working journalist Travis Chase is supposed to be getting comments from these pathologists who are doing the current examination. Good. I would want to believe that if the parents were to turn to the court to compel the authorities to hand over a copy of the report, it might be very well possible. That might be very well possible. But why do we have to fight all these fights for simple things, things that are as simple as those? When people have to jump through hoops to get these little things sorted and clarified, then you ask yourself what kind of democracy you're living in, since they claim it's a democracy. It's frustrating living in this place. And every day you're coming to realize it more and more and more and more. Sometimes you just don't know how else to deal with Guyana, or the people that claim to manage the affairs of Guyanese. So it's 23 minutes to 8 o'clock hour. It's Thursday. We're supposed to have Mr. Winston Jordan on. And so I'll just call him up, give him lots of time, to the adequate time, I should say, to do the thing, right? To talk to us about the economy and other matters of interest. Oh, before I do that, I know many of you are anxiously awaiting the report on court proceedings yesterday. Yes. The police presented a final witness yesterday. I see. Yeah. You know, looking back, I seriously don't know what the witness was called to do, except state his name, his rank, actions he took on that day when I was arrested. No technical information, blah, 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 nothing of the sort. Maybe he was called to just say I was there. I was there. But at the end of the police presenting the final witness, like I suspected, counsel, Niger Hughes, represented to the court that the police has not made out a case against me, and therefore there's no need for me to lead a defense. I think that was in a nutshell. And of course, the prosecution requested to respond to the submission of counsel Nigel Hughes, and the date for that is set for June 13th. Yeah, June 13th. And June 13th is Walter Rodney's death anniversary. Yeah. But on that date, I'm required to return to court. I hope for the conclusion of the matter. I simply hope for the conclusion of the matter. Let me see how that goes. This is Guyana. This is Guyana. Beautiful Guyana. Good. Let's see how that goes. So let me get Mr. Jordan on the line. I hope he's ready for me. Because usually, I don't think I usually call him this early, but let's go.
Hello.
Good morning to you, good sir.
Good morning to you, Kadaki. How do I find you today?
A mixed bag of frustration and optimism and everything, man. Systems ain't working in this country, so I ain't able to complain no more. I feel
Yeah, I know that feeling, but I've got to come back to say thankful Thursday, and glad to be in the land of the living, so to speak. Unlike you, I have the opportunity of traveling, and so I've taken that opportunity, and I'm doing this podcast from New York at the moment. I well, I was due to come anyhow well before they brought that trumped up charge to me in March. I already had my ticket since then to come around Memorial Day. I used to be a great fan of Memorial Day back in the past, up until 2014 was the last time. And we used to have a good time going to Atlanta. That's a school friend of mine. But since that time, abandoned Memorial Day after he fell on hard times, so to speak. But the last time I've been in New York was last year for Labor Day, so to speak. And I'd also glad that I did seek to come around Memorial Day, because I have been experiencing some severe pain in my right knee. I was forced to go to Woodlands, I think was last week Monday or the Monday before, to get it x-rayed to see what is happening. And so I'm taking the opportunity also while I'm out here to see if I can see any kind of doctor, general or specialist, that can help relieve me of some of the pain. So if anybody here on this podcast listening is a doctor or knows of one who is willing to give some pro bono advice and examination, I will be only too willing. I don't have much time more because I'm scheduled to be back in Guyana on the weekend. So it will have to be today or tomorrow or so. Otherwise, that I'll have to go see my friend to see if he can provide me with some assistance. This morning I was betwixt and between as to whether I will do the program today or wait until I get back. I decided to do it for a couple of reasons. One is that I want to give you a bit of my travel experience. Coming out last week, Sunday, out of Guyana, to catch a flight that will leave around about 6 o'clock on a weekend, imagine. I had to play it safe and leave Guyana and leave my home. My bar was ahead because of the chaos on the East Bank Road that they have, you can live two experiences and then you live them two again. I remembered back in the 90s, I think it was, when they were doing the road from around the Vera Torn there, up until, right up, I think, until somewhere around by Providence and so on. the chaos, the number of people who lost flights, and so on. And we're back to that situation all over again in the name of progress. So I played it safe, notwithstanding the fact it was a weekend. I think it was Saturday. Was it Saturday or was it Sunday? Yeah, Saturday. Last week Saturday. And got there on time, well ahead on time. In fact, I had to wait for the check-in counter to open. I was hobbling quite badly on this one foot, with the other one being in pain. And a very bright, good-looking staff of the airport saw me hobbling and asked me whether I wanted a wheelchair. And I promptly told her no. I'm too young for a wheelchair. She looked at me and she smiled, as if to say, all right, don't say I didn't ask. But at that, exactly. But in that particular moment, pride won over pain. Pride won over pain. You understand? But anyway, I didn't bother with the wheelchair. I didn't think I would wanted to see myself in wheelchair so early. So I endured the pain. Had a quick examination of passport and check-in. So that was your first. I want to bring this out because I saw Sinan Dorjan had an experience at the airport, which was both worrying and unbecoming. And it's in the context of that. Listen carefully what I want to say. So you had my first passport check, usual check that they will do for the check-in. They must see a passport and write down the information and whatnot. Then as I left there and took my bag to the scanner and so on, waited until they tell me it's okay, right? And then moved on to just before you enter the immigration area, there is somebody there now who have to check your passport again, which is familiar because that is nothing new. Then you enter the immigration area, and my first experience with the e-gates, right? Which quite pleasant, efficient experience. No problem, the gates are working and so on. But the problem I have is that the government doesn't seem to understand the nature and purpose of e-gates. The e-gates was supposed to facilitate smoother, efficient travel. And I've seen this before, where as they introduce technology, they maintain the same old paper-led system that you had, or whatever system that you had. In other words, then, technology is not replacing and making better the system. They are running parallel systems. So you have a computer system, and then you have a paper-driven system. You have a computer system. Imagine you have a computer system where you can store things in the cloud, paperless. But then you still have a law that says you have to keep 7 years of vouchers in these salt bags, and you have to go and get. I mean, I had that experience as a minister. Well, as a minister, we had to go and see if we could get these containers, buy containers to store vouchers and so on. Even though you got computers and you got computer technology, where all of these matters can be scanned and stored in the cloud, but we run parallel systems. So back to the e-gates. Imagine the e-gates, it's supposed to facilitate smoother travel. When you go through those e-gates, you're not supposed to be seeing no immigration officer who pretends to be doing literally the same thing that you had before you had the e-gates. The e-gate is taking your passport information. It is scanning your face and everything else, even more than an immigration officer can do. So I thought those e-gates were like the e-gates I go through in other airports. No. As soon as you come out the second door of the e-gates, immigration is there, officer. So the very pleasant young lady, very, very pleasant. And she's an asset to the immigration department and the wider police force. She recognized me and she said, hello, Mr. Jordan. Can I have your passport? I gave her the passport and thing. And while she was going through it, perhaps looking for a page to stamp, to put the exit stamp. She asked me a very innocuous question. Are you still in Parliament? I found it quite innocuous uh, and so on. But I mulled the question, and then I said, and I smiled and I said, not really, you know. I left that since August 2020. I'm leaving that to younger folks. That was my response. And she smiled and she stamped the passport. And instead of giving me back the passport, she said, just hold for me for a second. I just want to check with my supervisor to see if everything is all right. Well, I didn't say anything because I don't know what that meant really, to see if everything is all right and so on. And within half a minute or thereabout, she came back smiling and said, everything is okay, Mr. Jordan. Here's the passport, you can go. So I said to her, what was that all about? And she said to me something to the effect, it's not her exact words, but something to the effect, oh, well, you know, we check members of parliament, and other officials, something to that effect. And then her parting words, it is official immigration policy. Well, that struck me as, you know, and it still has me, you know, beaten as to where was this going and so on. Has me beaten as such, because don't forget, these days you have to enter your information prior to you reach the airport, or even at the airport you're entering your information that you would have put on the thing. So at all times, immigration police and all these people got a whole set of information, whether from the manifest and all these things. So I found this thing about, oh, from time to time you check in members of parliament. I ain't no member of parliament, you know, and then slipping the word officials. And it had me a bit beaten as to whether they are profiling people at the airport, and not only people, in a sense, whether they are profiling people, opposition, or quote unquote enemies of the government, whether they're profiling these people and so on. I'm not saying, let's be very clear. The immigration people are absolutely fantastic. There was nothing. I'm just making a comment on the observation, and perhaps the immigration should come out and say clearly what exactly was the purpose of that, little conversation, and the response that the immigration officer gave to me. Because I'm saying that because a couple of days after when I arrived here, I read about the experience of Mr. Dojan and his family, right? And since he is not a government officer, he's not an MP and all this thing that the girl thing. What was the purpose of him going through all of that? And again, one could only make the connection that he's a lawyer for Mohammed. And so why are you now harassing the lawyer of Mohammed, or singling him out for what you call special attention? You know. So I think I'm raising it and putting it in the public domain so that people can be aware and they can put their experience if they had similar experiences. But the more fundamental one for me is, what exactly is the purpose of the e-gates if you still have immigration officers tracking and stamping and all these kinds of story, right? In fact, the e-gates will become a frustration, and will have lines built up when you have 2-3 airlines going out, because there are only four e-gates there. As my memory serves me well, there are only 4 e-gates, you know. So the government has to make up its mind whether it's prepared to go with the technology, or whether it still believes that visible hand, that visible human hand, has to play a presence. It has to play a presence. Let them take instructions from other airports, well busier airports than TIIME, and see how e-gates work. There's nobody to once you go through those e-gates in other airports, there's nobody there waiting for you to take your passport, stamp your passport. You move to the next layer or level the government department, whether it's the scanning part or the customs part or whatever the case may be. They got to make up their mind what really they want. They got to make up their mind. And if they're looking for people who are quoting can't travel and so on, I'm sure that is an easy thing from the time they see the manifest. They can just single, they don't already single out those persons and so on. But why are you seeming to do what you might think is in what the girl said was official immigration policy, right? Now, I don't work at immigration. I don't know anything about the immigration and so on, but I wish the immigration people would clarify what is this official immigration policy as it relates to members of parliament or maybe ex-members of parliament or maybe other officials, quote unquote officials, you know. And perhaps while we are here, the government may explain how do they deal with people who are using the VIP lounge. Because I say that because when I was a minister, I didn't initially use the VIP lounge. Why? Because I always presented myself to the check-in area, then went to the immigration and did my thing, then go through the scanner. And I used to go to the executive lounge because I had traveling first class, you get or business class, you get a thing from Premier Airlines to use the executive lounge and so on. So for a good year and a half or so or two, I was doing that. And then I started using the VIP lounge, which, you know, to be quite honest, I much prefer using the executive because there's better things than the VIP lounge there. And that in any case, the use of the VIP lounge was a hassle. Every time you want to use the VIP lounge, you have to write a letter to Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Regardless of whether you're a minister or not, you have to write a letter to Ministry of Foreign Affairs to get permission. So I tried to avoid all of that by just going to the executive lounge. But there was a time also going through the VIP lounge when the scanner wasn't working and so on. So the point I'm making is, what's the sense of putting through people the rigors, those who are not using the VIP lounge, putting through the rigors of the scanner downstairs, the body scanner, which is the entire body, and seeing everything, And then after you come out to this scanner that's seeing everything, you still have somebody out there with another scanner, plus going through your body, poking your body after you're going to go through this body scanner. These things are very irritating, to be quite honest. Unless they say, well, it's our work, I don't see. I travel widely all over the place, widely. And nobody is thinking you more than United States. If United States got a reason after you go through the scanner to do a secondary or whatever they call scanning by way of physical body search, they do. But I don't see them doing it to everybody who go through a full body scan and then come out to that and then got to go through that again. But that seems to be what happens at TIIME. If the scanner ain't working, then just search me first. Rather than having me go through the scanner, full body scan, and after come out the scan, you still got this thing, this handheld thing running up and down, and then you got somebody poking the hand all over you, poking your hand on your neck, your chest, your leg, and you know, all other parts that your mother ain't see since you're born. You know, it's kind of demeaning, so to speak. What I'm saying is that it can't be that everybody who goes through that full body scan, they see something that they got to go through with everybody, you know. But anyway, but for the rest, it was okay. Landing in New York, oh, I mean, 11 o'clock in the night, 11 something in the night. Wow. JFK is just a real massive, busy airport. If you see the line, big. But again, it's not like some of them banks where you have facilities for say 14 or 15 tellers, and then only 3 working and 4 working. Every wicket at the JFK was working, and working with a great deal of efficiency because they got to get rid of hundreds. They have to deal with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands maybe, of people as flights, more and more flights coming in, and so. And contrary to all the talk and so on. I witnessed for that hour that I spent in that line waiting for my turn. You know, quite high degree of efficiency of those people. They ask a spot question or two. They seem to know who they need to ask more from and so on. But that was a quite pleasant experience as I have always had with entering United States. Memorial Day, I was happy to be back. I went to a backyard Memorial Day barbecue with some ex-police and some other folks. And I'm saying, I think I want to open a Jordan smokehouse. I know they got Scotties there. I went there and, well, I'm not going to make my comments public about what I think about the facility. It's a nice area that he has there, but there are a couple of things. You need to go to places like Texas and those places to find out what is a smokehouse and how it goes. But I'm saying this because the person who does that barbecue there, because I've been there before, I've been there Labor Day, the after Labor Day barbecue was kept right there also last year, August. And I've been there and must have been the same person. That barbecue is to die for. And I would love to employ her. And she's Guyanese. She's Guyanese. In fact, the whole everybody in there was Guyanese in the diaspora. Love to employ her at my Jordan Smokehouse. Coming soon. It sounds familiar, right? You remember Portugal coming soon. So Jordan Smokehouse is coming soon. If I could get this girl to come and do my barbecue. Wonderful barbecue. Magnificent ribs. Great atmosphere. Great atmosphere. 70s, 80s music. Oh my goodness. Brought back so many memories. And it's the kind of clearing of the air, you know, the taking off of the pressure that one needs, you know, getting out of Guyana, coming away from that pressure. Guyana is like a pressure cooker. Guyana is an unhappy place. You know, other people are on the happiness index. Guyana is on the suicide index, and so on. Guyana is among the top 5 countries for suicide rates, right? Whereas Trinidad and Jamaica are among the top countries for happiness. It's Guyana got great potential, but that's all it has, great potential. All other things is just stress and stress and stress. So then you've got to go and clear the air, distress, to come back afterwards and stress again, hoping that your blood vessels don't burst. New York itself, maybe and the white America, it's not the same. You could sense a change in the air. One thing I could say is that the prices are horrendous. The sale is only by name now. It's not genuine sales that, and I'm speaking this from a person who has been visiting the United States since 1982. I made my first trip to the United States in November of 1982 when I went to Washington for a week. And then I spent another 2 weeks in New York after that course had finished. And since then, I've been traveling consistently, regularly, extensively to the United States. And it's for the first time I could say New York ain't cheap. Our favorite places like Walmart and Burlington and so on, Target and so on, they aren't cheap anymore. And the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration seem to be creating much of a havoc on these prices. Really, in fact, I read somewhere, I think it's on Yahoo News, where for the month of was it March or April, the government treasury has taken in a whopping $92 billion as a result of tariff imposition. $92 billion. At an average of $92 billion, that will make 1.08 trillion United States dollars in a year that is being taken out of the economy, that is putting pressure on demand, consumer demand, and so on. Right? So the prices aren't very nice, and it's for the first time my couple dollars that I was able to get and bring can't stretch as far as I would like it to be. And so I'll spare a thought for those who live here and have to manage on very slender budgets and still make do, because other prices are going up. Rent has gone up, and the bills just keep going up. And the tariffs now is adding to those bills. So I commiserate our diaspora people, who, notwithstanding all of this pressure, still think about Guyana, that is supposed to be oil rich and fastest growing, but yet still depends heavily on remittances for survival. It's a paradox, but it's one that can be solved. It's one that can be solved. It's whether we back home willing to do what it takes to get that paradox solved. And okay, so I was in a line at um, at Burlington that snaked all over the place, notwithstanding, just to cash 2 items, and I decided not to go, and I did the ultimate. And so, forgive me, all those who are um, observing the ban on Target. Forgive me, I was forced to go to Target. I wasn't able to stand up with this hobbling leg of mine in that huge line, long line. And so I went to Target and got the 2 items. And there was no line in Target. And so I was in and out in a jiffy. But as I looked wrong, the bulk of the people employed at Target are Afro Americans. And so it bothered me that, on the one hand, the boycott is probably biting, probably. But on the other hand, the impact it will have on the employment of those people, and whether sooner than later Target may not be forced to close stores and retrench people. In fact, while I was out here, I read where so many stores are closing. Forever 21 and all the popular stores, Big Lots, and so on. All these stores are closing, most, if not all, of their branches and so on. And that can have a tremendous impact employment, because at a lot of these stores you have a lot of black and brown people who work at them, and it must have an impact on individual and household income. But we just got to hope in the Caribbean that, notwithstanding all of that, together with the proposed bill to charge a fee on remittances coming to the Caribbean and other places, that we can continue to count on our diaspora folks for whatever assistance they may be willing to give us to help us survive in Guyana. Because until we can change what is happening in Guyana, until we can make money circulate where it should be circulated, which is among the poorest of the poor, the employed poor, and so on, we will still have that scenario where heavy dependence will be on the diaspora for the support in the form of remittances, where the cash, barrels, and other things. And also, of course, investments, whether it be in the minibus trade, retail trade, housing, whatever. So that is my musings based on my travels so far. I noticed Suriname, quickly by way of passing, I noticed Suriname has completed their elections quite uneventful. And that if all goes well, that they should be having a new president, first woman president in Suriname. If it happens, I say kudos to them, and so on. What I like about this Suriname electoral mechanism that they use is that it's almost guaranteed that a coalition has to happen. Because, number one, to elect the president, it requires 2/3. That's great. There are 51 seats in the House, so 2/3 is 34. So that's great. So to get to that it will be very difficult to get a single party in Suriname to get 34 seats, based on the tribal nature of the politics there also, as in Guyana. It's perhaps worse in Guyana than over there, because that tribalism there is spread out among maybe 8 to 10 parties, whereas in Guyana it's about two the key parties that account for maybe 90+% of the votes cast. And so it's almost inevitable for one of those to be governing, even if by the slim majority that the present one is governing, and the slim majority that the coalition had governed with, and so on. So the experiment in Suriname, it's good because there's a feeling of inclusion at 34 out of 51 that involves about 6 different parties. There's a feeling of inclusion, right? But because of the nature of the politics also over there is going to be a feeling of exclusion, because the VHP party is a predominantly Indian party. The VHP party of Santoki is a predominantly Indian party. And with the 17 seats that it got, it must feel some fair degree of exclusion from the cabinet and from the government. So notwithstanding the fact that the coalition in Suriname is a broad-based coalition in terms of the number of parties that have been included in the coalition, I don't believe that the party that represents the broad mass Indians in Suriname is part of that coalition, and hence they will feel that Indians will feel that they're excluded. And I'm not sure how that will develop. But their politics seem to be a bit more mature than ours, and I'm sure they have systems in place, particularly the constitutional and legal systems in place, that should anything go awry, that they can invoke those, you know. Now people may say, well, we have in Guyana constitutional and legal systems. We have them on paper. We have them on paper. That's all. We have them on paper. If our systems work, we will never have had a 12th parliament of the kind that we have today. Never. But that is what it has. And we will never believe that somebody who is governing 34 out of 33 out of 65 believes that 33 is equal to 100% or 110% or whatever the case may be. I saw in today's paper reading that Sanders gone again with that thing about Guyana have one of the most advanced constitutions in the Caribbean. Yeah, if what was in the constitution was being adhered to the letter and spirit, we would have been saying yes. Yes. When you say Norway and all these places that advance constitutions, they do. And the constitutions work. And they could depend on the constitution to help them and so on. It is no sense saying we got one of the most advanced constitution, which is on paper, and yet we can't get our rights and so on inherent in that constitution to be invoked and to be applied to both the spirit fearlessly and everything else. Yeah, so I saw him come up with that story again about we have been one of the most advanced. But what has that done for us lately? What has that done for us lately? Look how many laws we have put on the books. Look how many laws we have put there. And what has happened to those laws? All we do is keep putting more and more laws. More and more laws. Look at the oil spill law. Imagine you have an oil spill law of that caliber and magnitude that you're refusing to send to a select committee for the widest and broadest possible consultation. Refusing. Imagine you have a motion on something as sacred sacrosanct as our border. And you doing it, you refusing even the simple courtesy of bringing on board the opposition or the widest cross section of the country to craft such a motion and to ensure its unanimity in the public. We must have looked like a disgrace to the world in which we debating a motion that doesn't have the support of a wide cross section of the country. What has support is that our borders are inviolable. But the motion didn't have. And when I was out here and I looked at it and I shake my head and I said, no, man, no, 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 no. This thing is going across the world. Can the government at least, what would it cost the government, even at that late stage, even during the lunch break, to get the whips together and to go through the motion quickly, clause by clause, and agree to some amendments in the spirit of compromise, bring them back on the floor, and get the support of 65 out of 65 people. What is this in the government's DNA that dislikes and disdains those who are not on their side of the floor to the detriment of the wider national unity of the country? And to all those who feel that regardless of whatever is done to the opposition, they're bound to support, I say, really? I say, really? They're bound to support? The opposition got constituents that they got to report to. And if you ask the constituents, they will tell you enough is enough. How many times you are going to turn the cheek? You still have a cheek after you've been lashing it all the time? Do you still have cheeks? A simple matter that should not be any, should not bring any rancor or anything. And since 2023, you had the same thing. You had the support of the opposition because they were involved. What is wrong? What is wrong? So I believe a lot of these things are deliberate, and they are born out of something that says that Guyana belongs to only a certain set of people. Guyana belongs to only a certain set. Power in Guyana belongs to only a certain set of people. And even where you're not even sharing the power, you don't even want to involve people. You got the ultimate say, imagine. You got the ultimate say, but you don't even make a little thing about involving people just for face saving or just for window dressing. Just because you got them Guyanese African descent in the party, right? Window dressing. There's nothing else but window dressing. We all know that. It was said also the same thing about the coalition and the Indians in the coalition. They said it was window dressing. It's not something that is going to be taken out of the heads of many people, right? Because they genuinely feel that they don't have the power of their erstwhile friends of the other persuasion, of the other ethnic persuasion. So that's not going to come out. But Guyana's composition of a multiracial society ain't going to change. Maybe the mix in there is going to change, but the whole concept of the mix of multiracial society is not going to change. And I don't know that this government is doing anybody any favors by suggesting or giving the impression of some level of superiority of one ethnic group over the rest, or some level of superiority of one political party over the rest, and so on. By the way, as an aside, and I'm not going to be saying nothing more, I see a lot of pictures about who in crossing and who in crossing and all this kind of story. I leaving that to the politicians. My view is very extremely cynical, and sometimes I make it public, my cynical views. And if you remember any cynical view I've made in public about this crossing and so on, it remains. It remains. So I don't know, putting picture of Daniel Seram and his cross. The one thing I would say no, and I said it in the case of Gita Chandan, is this: nobody is stopping you or anybody else from associating with whoever you want. That's your right. But in the case of Gita Chandan and in the case of Daniel Seram and all the others, do it while you're not part of the outfit that you're presently associating with and which you are saying you have lost confidence in. How could you lose confidence in the political outfit and still remain in the outfit? Mr. Daniel Seram, do the right thing and resign your position as regional chairman. And I said this to Ms. Gita Chandan, do the right thing and resign your position as member of parliament. You have lost confidence, you have lost faith in the party that put you there. Why will you want to switch while you still holding on to the party that you lost confidence in? Why? And in Mr. Daniel Seram's case, it ain't gonna cost you anything because the parliament will be shut down soon. And you're not a member of parliament anyhow. So go your way in peace. Nobody's stopping you from going. In fact, some people say you went from day one. And I had my problems with you from day one also when you were refusing to make representations of Region 4 as it relates to the budget for Region 4. Me don't make me story plain. Me want friends. I ain't got too many. But I do not want people to believe I say one thing in front of the face and another. No, I am saying plain. If you don't want to be friend, no problem. At 67, going into 68, why do I need to pile on more friends? But this is the thing I cannot understand with these people who call themselves politicians or who thing. You come here, you had faith in the party make you who you be, because in many cases, you tell me how somebody who just come in the party could make general secretary of that party, one of the most exalted positions in any political party. You really think the PPP will take such a person and make them general secretary of the PPP? But Norton experimented with that, and I think in all his political science and all his things and so on, it's a blunder that he made. I don't care. It was a blunder, and I told him so. A blunder. Everybody knows, check the general secretaries of the PNC, you will see. These were hardcore PNC people, long-serving, people who grassroots people who could go into communities, people who could walk like if they were, the biblical Jesus and so on, into these communities. Why would you make such a person general secretary who couldn't communicate with the thing? And in Daniel Seram case, same story. Same story. These experiments, if you want to experiment with them, they must come from hardcore people, hardcore supporters who, by dint of their hard work and through the years, would have said, yes, they're ready for such a position. So you can't vex with the hardcore supporters of the PNC when they look at these things and they say, what's the sense of them being here? These people just come, you plug them into there. They haven't shown any faithfulness. They haven't shown by dint of hard work through the years, perspiration, sufferings, and so on, that they're for the party, with the party, through thick and thin, and so on. They just come and you give them exalted positions. And like I said, I ain't looking for friends. So don't come for me. I ain't in anybody's party, including the PNC. so I could speak my mind happily and clearly. I know they want to speak their minds, but they are afraid that they're going to be called racist and they got to look for Indian votes and all this kind of story. Poppycock. When the other side wants to talk about us, they don't look and say, well, afraid because I'm looking for black votes and so on. And this kind of mentality from the black folks, from the Indian folks and so on, has had a debilitating impact on Guyanese of African descent. Because it's like the damn they do and damn they don't. They work hard for the party. If the party wants something, they will look mostly to the African support. The base is predominantly African. And yet they sacrifice their base to show that they are multiracial, and all these kinds of story. When they know in reality, there ain't no multiracial party in Guyana. None. There are ethnic parties with a sprinkling of other races. But get it clear, both parties, their base is predominantly of one ethnic. And unlike the PPP, the PNC doesn't seem to think that is a reality. And they have to overtly support that base and strengthen it. Because it's by what your works you do that perhaps others may be attracted to your party. And if people only come in because they can't get positions in the PPP, or they can be a little fish in a big ocean if they go to the PPP, so they come into the PNC with this knowledge that, well, they're gonna have to treat me well, otherwise it's gonna show as if they don't like Indians, or and so on. That has played a lot, too much and too long. Too much and too long. And the party strategists them need to sit down and make their assessment about where this thing has carried us. Where it has carried us. I made a post a day or two ago, and I said, listen, I like the Suriname model. Let all we tribal parties go there and vote. We know we tribal. Don't give us no foolishness about thing and so on. We know we tribal. 90% of the votes can come from the tribe. And when we done, let us have an arrangement like in Suriname, where you have to get some 60% or 65% or 2/3. So the tribes got to come at the table, the negotiating table, and negotiate a governance structure where everybody will feel included. The present one, in working, will not work. And that is why we have this kind of competition where we must get our tribal party to win, because if we don't, then we lose, and we lose 100%. And that has happened over the last 5 years. It has happened. And God forbid, if the PVP wins again, you will see them in their strata. All this talk about, we're growing fast and we're growing this and so on. I wishing for the day when we could have these ethnic impact studies. Tell me, but it's 10,000 gold scholarships. It's 10,000 gold, and 5,000 went to Guyanese African descent. Gold scholarships. And what you're doing? Equating scholarships to income, land ownership, land rights. The second African decade of people of African descent. What it is that you're doing. All of these different things. As an African, Guyanese of African descent, I feel marginalized. And I'm an educated person who served over 40 years, but I still feel marginalized compared to some of the things I see happening in Guyana. Some of the just come lately, I see, and what they have been able to accumulate. And don't give me no thing, it was the hard, the old-fashioned way and all this kind of story. Some of the people are here in the land, some of the lands in Guyana that I heard that have been already appropriated. The strategic thing about building roads in areas where the lands have already been appropriated or the lands have been identified to be appropriated by a certain set of people. I was disgusted when I learned who owned lands along the Heroes Highway. And this is continuing throughout the country. And they lull you into some false sense of security. Oh, we give 10,000 gold scholarships and 5,000 went to African Guyanese. 5,000 went to African Guyanese. Where are they? And you're still talking about high unemployment in Guyana. Where these 5,000 have they graduated? Where's the tracer study to say where have they been employed? Where? And everybody knows, apart from the Amerindians, the only other group of people who never asked to be brought to this country called Guyana was African. And yet, when we were brought, we were made to suffer like beasts of burden, work to the bone for free. For free. And people want to say, oh, well, that was in the past, and this and that. Oh, isn't the past that is defining the present and the future? You want to wipe away the fact that it's African Guyanese who work as beasts of burden for hundreds of years as slaves to build this country, but yet today they own virtually nothing in the country that they built. Yes, they virtually own nothing. Don't point to me to couple house here and a house lot there. House lot is not house. And everybody knows large numbers of house lots all over the country, whether Indian or African or what, lying there because the people don't have the income, whether individual or household, to get even a $5 million to build a one-bedroom house. And like I said last week, you could raise the limit how much you want and lower the interest rate how much you want. All that will mean nothing to people whose incomes are static or are declining in real terms. It means nothing to them. And when you pump money in the way you pump money into the economy, that raises the liquidity level and has a consequence on inflation, what have you done? A house that would have cost $10 million to build in 2019, when inflation was almost zero, will cost 30, 35 million, 40 million today to build. And that shows you the extent of the price rises over that short period of time. Ask anybody who build in a house. It's hell to complete a house. Hell. And every time you go and you purchase something now, based on the little back pay they give you, by the time you get the next back pay, you can't purchase the same number of zinc sheets and so on. That is what is going on there. So telling people we have in our manifesto of 50,000 house lots. What does house lot? House lot don't mean houses. Don't mean houses. And it's all well and good to cut ribbon showing you have massive tanks. You just put in one, I think, at Lima Sands and Essequibo. It's good to cut. Are you going to be there 6 months from now when it starts malfunctioning and the people don't get water? Are you going to be there? Are your officials going to be there, or are you just moving on to the next one? cutting more ribbons to move on to the next one. Has anybody done a study of the schools that they've built within the last year or last 2 years? Have they done any maintenance to those schools? Or are you just putting on more, adding on more? These are the things that are as frustrating as telling people fastest growing economy. These are the things that are as frustrating. And I don't know what more the good Lord above us has to do to us as Guyanese. He has given us everything. He's given us all the wealth. He's given us land. He's given us arable land, forests, fresh water, salt water for fish. He's given us oil, manganese, bauxite, all these things. He has given a small population that has never, ever approached 1 million. And yet still in this country, we got 48% of the people wallowing in poverty, defined as they can't subsist on the $5.50 US a day. That's 1,100 Ghana dollars. He has given us all of that. And yet, we have this problem. And in that small population, we still have people who so want to divide us that only a certain set of people in that small population will get the plums, while the rest will get the shaft. And the rest is the biggest part. They will get the shaft. But there's a lot of work to be done. And we have to pay attention, particularly Guyanese of African descent need to pay particular attention, not to the vibes cartel and the West that they want to get you hung up in, so they could call you scrape heads and criminals and all these kinds of things, and they can then shoot you down as dogs. But we need to pay attention about this country called Guyana, that we use, our foreparents use whatever implements, including their fingernails, to build. Because before your eyes, Guyana is rapidly changing population-wise. It is rapidly changing population-wise. And everybody in that country landing except the ones that look like me and you. So the percent of the African population in Guyana over time will dwindle. This is not thing. I know of countries where the African population who went there as slaves and so on are almost extinct, if not extinct. Do your history and you will see it. But if we want to sit down and imbibe on the vibes cartels and them, nothing wrong with the shows, but they are doing that to you as a bomb, not as entertainment, as a bomb. That is what they're doing. And while you are at Vibes Cartel on the ground floor, the rain could have lick you up and so on, pay attention to who are in VVIP. Then you will understand. You will understand. But my folks, elections are upon us. Elections are upon us. And the first thing about election is that you got to make certain you're registered. And here is where the parties, notwithstanding your inability to collate, have to collate for the purpose of going house to house to make certain every person, intellect or scrape head, is registered. And then you have to make certain you get enough funds to make certain they are out there to vote. There's no sense complaining and no sense hollering, oh, me don't vote. I mean, somebody, I was telling somebody Memorial Day, that there's a certain gentleman, army person, who made public that he never voted in his life. And I won't want to tell you what was the reaction because they all knew the certain gentleman and so on. People fought for, parents fought for the right to vote as part of their freedoms and their choice. And you got people telling you they don't vote. Me don't vote because it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Whoever go there is the same thing. Comrades, a no vote is a vote for the person who win. That's simple as that. And you got those who are selling their votes for $5,000 and a box of fried rice. That thing that your foreparents fought for, died for, you are selling for $5,000 and a box of rice, a box of fried rice. And you expect others to be responsible for your advancement and your development when you don't want to be a part of the solution? And that is to get up and stop making excuses and go there and vote. Even if you don't vote for the opposition, at least you will have a part to play and say because you voted. When you voluntarily take away your right to vote, you are taking away all your other rights. Don't let people fool you. You can't talk that you want improved police thing and then sit down home and not vote. And you can't talk about wanting improved salary and so on and then selling your vote. And then you can't want talk that as a youngster, you got 40 degree and wherever else, you went to school all this, and you can't find job and you don't want to go out and vote. You really think others will are responsible for your development? You are responsible for your development, and part of that responsibility is for you to go out and vote. And I see already on the internet this app that tells you go in there, put in your ID card or whatever else, and see whether you're on the voters list. But the party scrutineers and whoever else, they got to start doing their work if they haven't started before, to make certain that people are on the list, and where they are not on the list, they got to try and help them to do whatever it takes to get them on the list. I remember back in the coalition days, there were so many people that approached us at these government on the road that we used to call them, where we used to go from different regions and so on and take government to the people. So many people came who didn't have birth certificates, who don't know what an ID card looked like, and so on. And so many of them had to be helped. I don't know what's going to be the position now because it's different ball game. But at least let us find all those people who don't have the ID cards and all this kind of thing, and let us see how they can be helped in terms of the paperwork. Because a lot of these people can't read and write. A lot of them can't read and write, and a lot of them are ashamed. I remember one girl came to me at a political meeting. It took a lot of coaxing and then realization that she couldn't read or write. Incredibly. And there's a lot of that. A Guyana that had a 90-something% literacy rate, highest in the Caribbean, perhaps rivaled only by Barbados, is now wallowing in the low 80s. And perhaps could be even less than that. But we got a lot of people out there who are functional illiterates and who are ashamed of their station in life, and therefore trying to get them to go and register is a big problem. But that is the work for Arbery and Nigel Hughes and all them who put up their hand and ask for the job. They need to organize and mobilize the people to go after those same people. The other problem you got is that so many people have fallen through the economic cracks that they don't have a permanent place of domicile, except if you call it the seawall or the pavement under the Guyanese stores or the GPO or the markets or any other familiar places. And these aren't one and two and three people. You got hundreds of people who are like that. You got people living in squalor all over the place. And the last thing on their mind is about voting or about getting registered, even though it is critical to them, even as they don't have a place of abode. That is where you have to go. Get all those people. It is nice to be seen at cocktails and so on with fancy boots and dresses and so on. But the hard work is when you take that fancy dress and boots off and go into the slums, go into the swamps, go into the creeks, and get all of those people. You ain't gonna beat the PPP by fancy dress parades and cocktail sipping and so on. You got to go all into those places and get those. And there's a large number of them who have fallen out of the development process for whatever reason, whether it's hard times, whether it's family problems, whether it's whatever. And those are people who are extremely hard to bring them back into. Extremely hard. They're frustrated. They don't believe in the system and all these things. It can take a lot of coaxing to get them back to believe, to see a future. Do you believe and would you believe, notwithstanding all the 600 something thousand people that seem to have got cash grant, large numbers of the people still out there have not got cash. Why? Because the government refused to take quote unquote cash grant to those people, not literally the checks, but to go to those people and bring them into the formal system. Those are the people who should have been targeted as number one priority. Those people. There's a lot of work to be done, but I don't know whether these 40 and 30 party, everybody, the preening and the ego, big fat ego, like if that is going to bring them the presidency. I mean, again, as I said, don't come for me. I'm highly annoyed that they didn't take seriously my proposition out there that you can't divide a minority to achieve a majority. But it seems the same way how slavery lasted so many years, because the slave masters had the stratagems to keep us apart, it's the same thing is happening today. Whether they are the white masters or the brown masters, the ultimate objective is the same. Keep us apart. Keep us apart. Because to keep us apart and to keep us divided is, and keep us distracted, is to easily conquer us. Everybody with a big ego. Everybody believes they're popular. And they can bring them the presidency. Notwithstanding the history of politics in the Caribbean, which even, it seems, the great Walter Rodney didn't understand. Check the politics in the Caribbean. But everybody believe they're more popular than Barnum. They're more popular than Walter Rodney. They're more popular than C.N. Sharma. These were all popular guys. These were all popular guys. And except for Barnum, none of them were able to turn their popularity into seats, votes, parliament, presidency. None. What does it tell you about the politics of this bifurcated, ethnically divided society? But it's what? We don't learn? We don't learn? Everybody want to be president. Everybody got a big ego. Everybody want to form their own party. Everybody know everything that is wrong about Norton. But we don't know what's right about them. Not to say I think Norton. I just showing you where all this is going. Everybody know what's wrong with Norton. Everybody got the answers. But what? The answer involved them. So nobody wants to do the hard work. Nobody wants to figure out what is the objective, which is to win the presidency and to govern the country. Everybody wants to divide up and subtract and everything else before you win anything. They didn't meet in to put together a program. They were meeting to determine who must lead coalition. And I said at the memorial on Monday during the discussion, and they said, they didn't. Well, the point I was making was really valid because they didn't think of that. I said we were rushing headlong into something without doing a forensic analysis of what went wrong with the previous one. Headlong into, and you could see, I mean, I ain't no soothsayer or anything, but you could see any coalition that was hobbled or cobbled together to contest these elections based on what was taking place and what I know was taking place was doomed to the same failure like the previous coalition. Doomed. Because why? First of all, as I said, no forensic analysis was done about the previous coalition. And to bring lessons into the new coalition, we went headlong again into who must be presidential candidate and so on. Why did we really think people are stupid? You really think you can pluck somebody, something called some consensus candidate? Who the hell is a consensus candidate? Who? What is the definition of a consensus candidate? Guyana has never had a consensus candidate. The politics of this country doesn't allow for consensus candidate. Who's a consensus candidate? Ali's a consensus candidate. Ali getting ruling this country with 33 seats out of 65. That's a consensus. Who's a consensus candidate? And you really honestly feel a couple of months before an election is due, you could pluck somebody out from some place, put them as the head of some coalition or something, and expect them to be able to tell the populace that they're better than those who are in the fields and with things and so on. People see through those things. They believe it's opportunist and so on, notwithstanding the good name of the persons. They believe it's opportunism. And if you don't win, they're gone. If you don't win, they're gone their way. Left to the hardcore and the diehards to pick up the pieces. Who's the consensus candidate? So instead of first going there and try to put together a program, get it out early in its parts. So by the time you're ready to put your manifesto out, it wouldn't come as one of those dress-up documents. But people and the society will already know what they can get, what they can look forward to. Not these dressed up documents that they glossy documents, shiny documents, with 99% they think the ordinary person don't know one thing about, but they're going and get the balloons and the little food and things that they're gonna be throwing out at these caravans that they've been carrying from village to village. They call thing meetings. They could have gone and done that. Put it out there. And then a coalition would have naturally evolved out of that. If this work was being done 2-3 years ago, coalition evolved for that. But some people say AFCA want a coalition. Well, so be it. So be it. You just have to take it as what it is. Take it as what it is, because it seems as if certain people have already made the decision that they didn't really want to win. They want to be spoilers. Right? And for me, God forbid, if that is a conclusion, a correct conclusion, I would say they have no business. Whoever have no business being anywhere near any parliament, much less politics. Because if you want to be in politics just as a spoiler rather than a winner, then please don't go straying people. Go straying people. Our politics is not designed to make kingmakers with that kind of spoilers. That's unfortunate. We have to accept. If we want to change the constitution, change it when the constitutional debate comes about. But we know the construct at the moment. We have to live within what the constitution says. You have to collate before rather than collate afterwards. Bonham was a genius. And I could understand his reasoning about collating before, rather than having the contrived things afterwards, which is more a power tussle when you're trying to collate afterwards, rather than a development program. Collate before means you got to put a development program in place. But we didn't seem to understand that. We think it's putting people in positions in place. That's what we think. So we start out with who must be president, who must be vice president, who must be prime minister, who must be minister this, minister that, and all kind of story. And that in itself is fraught with difficulties. Because if you read the Constitution carefully, the president is the supreme person. Everybody else is his helpers. And I didn't know since when the president can't pick his helpers We tried that before. But it's for Granger to talk his story. Ministers are helpers. And therefore, the president must be able to pick his helpers rather than having his helpers foisted on him. Because ultimately, he is the one who has to take the responsibility. And we have seen that kind of story before. Look at the mayor and city council. The mayor and city council, the town clerk don't report to the mayor. The city engineer don't report to the mayor. These are people who are appointed by some local government commission. And he who appoints disappoints. So where does that leave the mayor? Don't you see how the mayor is hapless? He means well. I know Alfred means very well. But what is he? His hands is tied. He gives an instruction. The officers don't have to carry it out because Mr. Mento can't do anything about them. Unlike, of course, say the president with all consuming powers, but he would rather not have to use those powers to dismiss somebody who has been foisted on him or her. But that is what I'm talking about, doing a forensic audit of the workings of the last coalition before you even dream about coming into this one here. And that when you do that and you come to this one here, the first thing is to try to map out a program that you want to run with rather than spending how much time trying to figure out who must be head the coalition and who's consensus candidate and all this kind of story. The people out there aren't fools. You want to pluck somebody from some place and put them there, they are going to say, hey, who's this person? I don't know anything about them. Oh, yes, they might be successful in their profession and so on. But what that got to do with us? What that has to do with us? But I digress. My main point I wanted to do, I think I'm going to do it next. I'm definitely going to do it next week because ultimately when I strayed away, I said it's a good stray because this one here, I have to answer that individual when it comes to this matter here. And I've been doing some research on it, and I will give you the benefit of my research on it next week. So Kadaki, I'm finishing early today. I think I'm going to find a way to get out there and find somebody who will help me with this pain management and ultimately, and the doctor would last tell me what I have to do, right? It's not arthritis, right? He did the x-ray and so on. It's not arthritis. I think it's something that got to do with patellar misalignment or something like that, and working on strengthening muscles and all these kind of things. But in the meanwhile, I need pain management, so to speak. So, Kadaki, I'm finishing early today. It's about 9:05 and so on. And I still have a couple more days in New York, and I need to see some more people. Plus, those who are listening and so on, I'm around. I know some of you have never seen me before and so on. So, if I have the time and we could catch up, but otherwise that it will be another time. All right, so thanks for another Thursday and bye. Back to you, gone.
Ade. I'm here, Mr. Jordan. I says, obvious Mr. Jordan has gone and left us. And so it's that time. It's 4 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour, and you've been tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, saying do have a pleasant rest of the day. It's Thursday, So if you are looking for a watering hole, you can come down to Club Twilight and have a relaxing evening, soft music, cold beverages. You can get some stew pork, or if you want some chicken foot sauce, perhaps. You know what I mean? The police don't in the street by. They're looking for me or nevertheless, y'all have a good day. Thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow, Vincent Alexander and the other opposition nominated commissioners are going to be on the program. And we're going to be talking about what's happening at GCOM there. I understand Vincent described the chairwoman. Sometimes I'm tempted to say chairwoman because she seems to be doing the cleaning job of the PPP. But the chairwoman senile and incompetent. Senility comes with age, but I don't know if Vincent is a medical doctor. His wife is a medical doctor. So I don't know if she gave him that diagnosis. But y'all have a good day. We shall talk. Much love and respect. Bye-bye.